Acetylcholine receptors are proteins that respond to the binding of acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter. Primary function. When acetylcholine binds to the receptor, the channel opens and allows the diffusion of sodium and potassium ions through the pore. Acetylcholine receptors also convert neurotransmitters binding into the depolarization of electrical membranes. This receptor triggers the start of motor neurons in voluntary movement. The acetylcholine receptor allows acetylcholine to do its job in the parasympathetic nervous system. This diagram is an example of a nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, which is an example of a ligand-gated ion channel. It is composed of 5 subunits arranged symmetrically around a central conducting pore. When acetylcholine binds, the channel opens up and allows the diffusion of sodium and potassium ions through the conducting pore. Structural components of the acetylcholine receptor. There are 2 types of acetylcholine receptors, nicotinic and muscarinic. Muscarinic receptors act at a higher level of the central nervous system, while nicotinic receptors, which are much faster, are seen more at the neurons of the spinal cord and at neuromuscular junctions in a skeletal muscle. In simple terms, nicotinic receptors are pentameric ligand-gated ion channels, whereas muscarinic receptors are 7-helix G protein coupled membrane proteins. Acetylcholine receptors have extracellular, intramembranous, and cytoplasmic portions. They consist of 5 subunits arranged around the central ion channel. 2 proteins are arranged in a long tube that crosses the cell membrane, which contains a binding site for acetylcholine. This diagram shows an acetylcholine receptor from the side and from the top. In orange, we have 2 protein chains arranged in a long tube that ends up crossing the cell membrane in gray. These 2 protein chains are alpha chains, and they contain the binding site for acetylcholine, which is shown in red. And at the bottom, it just shows a view from the top. The receptor is made up of 5 subunits, and these subunits are arranged in a cylindrical shape. Each of the 2A subunits, again, has an acetylcholine binding site. Both alpha subunits must be bound to an acetylcholine molecule in order to trigger the change of an ion channel. The location in cells. Acetylcholine receptors span the postsynaptic membrane. Postsynaptic membranes are membranes that receive a signal from the presynaptic cell and responds using depolarization. Acetylcholine receptors are found in the postsynaptic folds. They are also found on the surface of muscle cells, concentrated in the synapse between nerve and muscle cells. Importance to the human body. Acetylcholine receptors are important to the human body because it is what allows acetylcholine to bind and do the job needed. Acetylcholine is the main neurotransmitter of the parasympathetic nervous system, which contracts smooth muscles, dilates blood vessels, and slows heart rates. Acetylcholine receptors also play a big role in wakefulness and hormone secretion. Another important note to make about the acetylcholine receptor is the possibility of a receptor being blocked, and if the acetylcholine receptor is blocked, the neurotransmitter cannot do its job and will be taken back up by the neuron that released it, in a process called reuptake. Also, if the human body has a lack of acetylcholine, one can have learning and memory impairment, such as dementia and Alzheimer's disease. The acetylcholine receptor is a very important protein in our bodies. These are my references. Thank you.